Hey gang! Welcome back to another episode of Technically Something, the show where we talk about technology, creativity, tutorials, and gaming. I'm your host, Kevin Allen. Recently, I discovered a website that is blowing my mind. And the reason for this is because it's basically Photoshop for free, and you don't even need to install it. Okay, I am talking about Photopea. And in this episode, I just wanted to basically show you guys how this thing works. I'm going to show you the website and also just kind of go over some of the basic tools, functionality. If you've already watched my intro to Photoshop series, this is going to be pretty similar to that. Now you might be asking yourself, why am I bringing this up? It's because as a teacher right now with COVID-19 and a lot of online learning going on, I've had to find some alternatives to Photoshop because it's expensive. Normally my students have this in class, but guess what? If they're at home, bleh, and that's when I found this. So I'm going to show you how to use it. We're going to jump in right now. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is go to photopea.com. You ready for how simple this is? Boop, there we go. So as I said before, this is basically Photoshop for completely free. It's all inside the browser. You don't need to install it. There is this account option that I just discovered, and you could go with premium options for single user, team of 5, team of 20, and all these different things. However, when you look at the very top here, it shows for free, you get full functionality, but you'll get ads, okay? So ads will come and go, but that's a small price to pay for having basically Photoshop at your fingertips on a website so that you can edit from a Chromebook, from anything really. As long as you can access the website, you can use it. Now it says steps in history, so this is also something that we're going to work around because I'm going to show you guys how to work non-destructively eventually. But starting out now, let's just go ahead and take a look at the layout and the workspace. Just like most programs, you have your File tab. You can create a new document, open other documents, open from URL, and this is a cool feature. I'll show you in a sec. Take a picture, publish online, and export. Right now we have limited options because we don't have a file open. So if you want to open a file from a URL, this is cool. You can actually type in a link to an image. So if I were to go to another tab and go to unsplash.com, from here I could find any image that I want. Let's just go with shy tattooed dude. And once this loads up, I can right click and copy image address. Go back to the photo editor and paste this there. Click OK. And there we go. That's one way to get files in here, but another cool part about this is you could, on the same website, let's just go and find, yeah, sure, it's a good image, why not? I can go over this image, right click, and select copy image. Go back to Photopea and Control V. And just like that, we have the image. We can move it around, do all that. It's on its own layer. So I don't want to get ahead of myself on layers and stuff yet, but that's just to show you how you can bring images into Photopea. I don't even know how to say it. Am I saying it right? Is it Photopea? 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 Photopea. 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 So before we get ahead of ourselves, I'm just going to show you what's going on in this window. So at the very top, we have all of our different menus. One is for File, which we've already gone over. Edit shows you all of the options for editing your file. So we could step forward, step back. You could cut, copy, copy merged, paste, fill, stroke, and those will come into play later. There's all sorts of stuff. Image will deal a lot with making adjustments such as color, brightness, shadows, things like that, and also size. Layer deals strictly with how your layer behaves in the hierarchy of all of the images in your file. Select, this can be done by either selecting with a selection tool like the Lasso tool or a rectangular selection tool. Anything like that, you can either deselect a selection, inverse it so that it's the opposite of what you selected. You can refine the edge of your selection, or you could select based on color range and make modifications. There's also filters, which we will get into, but this is a way to kind of mess around with the layer that you're on and add certain special effects. View will change the view of what you're looking at. So if I zoom in, it zooms in. But it also gives you these shortcuts, which are very nice. You can add rulers so that you can see how large your document is, or take them off. Anything that has a check mark is already showing. Window is a way to control what is actually showing on your window. So if I were to select color, suddenly color shows up on my window as a tab, and I can switch between all of these other tabs. But if I don't want it to be there, I can just right click and select close. And window, I can go and add it back in. It's always there in the background if you need it. And more, this just goes to general stuff like language, theme. You can install Photopea if you want to, or you can just keep it on the browser. And here's another quick tip for zooming out and getting your document to show full size. You can hit Control-0 or Command-0 if you're on a Mac. So now, on the right side, I'm going to talk about something very important, the Layers tab. Now, whether you're in Photoshop or Photopea, the Layers tab is crucial. If you are organizing your work, you'll need to be using separate layers. So as I was beginning to talk about before, you have everything that you paste, and it should be pasted in layers. So if I select layer 1, and let's say I want to rename it because layer 1 doesn't really tell me too much, I can always double click layer 1 and name it something else. So in this case, I just named it boy. And I know that the first image I had was the guy with tattoos. So double click it, call it tattoo. All right, so now that we have those set up, we can do a couple things now just to show you how layers work. So whatever layer you have selected is going to basically give you control over that layer. So if I have the mouse and I click and move it, you'll notice I'm only moving the boy. I'm not moving the tattoo layer. Let's say you want to change the scale of your picture or your image. Make sure that you select the layer first so that it's highlighted, and then you're going to hit Control-Alt-T. And this brings you into the transform option. You'll notice that I can squeeze, stretch, do whatever I want to with the size and scale of this image. But if I want to constrain those proportions so that it doesn't get all weird, I hold Shift. And you'll notice now, no matter where I put my mouse, no matter where I drag, it's constraining those proportions so that it's not weird or doesn't get crushed in some weird way. And here's a tip. You'll always know that you're still in transform mode if you see that little line, that outline around the picture with those boxes that you can grab and drag. So if you still see that, hit Enter, and that means that you just committed those transform changes, okay? And now I can put it wherever I want. Let's go on down and say if I wanted to select a chunk of this picture. Well, we have a couple options. You have the rectangle select and the ellipse select. And I can access these just by clicking and holding on the tool. And the same thing goes for the lasso here. You have lasso select, polygonal, and magnetic. And these are different, but they essentially do the same thing. And I'm going to show you what each one does. So lasso select allows you to click and drag along a specific area, go back and let go. And once you see this dotted line, that means that you have this layer and this area selected. So I could go back to the mouse, and now it would let me take this chunk out because I had that selected. So if I want to remove this selection from this picture, all I have to do is deselect it. Always remember that, deselect. You hit Control-D to deselect. Now I'm going to show you the polygonal lasso tool, polygonal, whatever you prefer. And this one, instead of clicking and dragging, you click once, and then it's waiting for you to click the next point. So I can drag over to the next point, click, drag to the next point, click. And I just repeat that process. And this allows you to do straight lines, more or less, from point to point. But you don't have to click and drag between those sections. And the last one is the magnetic lasso tool. So when I use this one, what it's doing is detecting, think of it as detecting hard edges or high contrast. So this might work out fairly well, we'll see. But as long as you drag along an edge here, it should pick up on, oops, see, it's kind of snapping off there. But it starts to follow the general line of where you're going, and it's not perfect. As you can see, it doesn't quite know how to grab on. The magnetic lasso is not necessarily my favorite way to make selections, just because it can be a little scatterbrained. I've also never done it on Photopea, but if you find yourself dragging all over the place and it won't connect back to where you started, you can just hit enter, like I did, and then you'll get the dotted line. Deselect to go away from that. One other important thing about making selections and cutting stuff out, I'm going to show you really quick, is say if I just wanted to cut out the head of our guy here. Once I make that selection, I can go to the Layers panel, go down here, and if I hover over this symbol, it says Add Raster Mask. And what I just did is, it looks like I deleted everything outside my selection, but I didn't. I masked it. So it's still there, it's just hiding. And if you look next to the picture of the boy on the layer, it has this new square where everything is black and white. The white section represents what we can see or what is shown. The black section represents what is hidden. So if you grab a brush, so I'll go down here to my brush, click, and you can right click on the screen and choose different kinds of brushes. So I'm going to go with a soft round brush, and since this size seems a little bit small, I'm going to increase the size. This should be good. Once I'm ready, I can click off. And notice how I can select either the picture on the layer or the mask. So with the mask selected, I'm going to make sure that my fill color is black, and I can also change my background color to white. So now when I paint, see how some of this disappears? This is because I'm painting black onto the mask. And remember, black represents what is hidden, white represents what is showing. And one way to remember this is that you hide in the dark, but you're seen in the light. So white, show, black, hide. And you can also change these on the fly over here on the left by double clicking and then selecting whatever you would like and click OK. So I'm going to switch my brush to white, and the quick way to do that is just by hitting X. You'll notice on the fill color and the background fill, if I hit X, it swaps them. And check this out. I can paint the whole thing back in. It's never truly deleted. It's just hidden because of our layer mask. So I'll hit Control Z. So that's a quick introduction to using that tool. But let's go down the list here. There's also the crop tool, the eyedropper tool. So if you're trying to add, say, more of a certain color, and I'll use this as an example. I'm going to select our tattoo layer and create a blank layer above it by clicking on the new layer icon. And I'll just call this color. So if I use the eyedropper on the tattoo layer, when I click on this color, you'll notice that the fill color changed, and I can do that for any color on the document. Like right now I'm clicking and dragging, and you'll see that my fill color changes depending on what I select and where I go. So once I select this wall color, I can go to my blank layer, get my brush, and I'm going to increase the size a bit. A quick way to do this from the keyboard is using the left or right bracket. Left equals smaller, right equals larger. See, I can paint this in. So say I didn't want that color on the ceiling at all. Oops, I just got rid of the shadow. That's okay. So I can paint over this. And let's say I want to add some of that shadow back. Well, I can hit I on my keyboard to select the eyedropper. Click on that shadow, press B for brush, I can paint it back in. So that's just one way, but also it's non-destructive because I didn't paint on the layer itself. I painted on a blank layer on top. So see, if I go and hide this layer, and I can hit the eyeball to do this, all the changes that I made are contained on that layer by themselves, but they're above the other picture. Something that we'll get into in the next lesson is the healing brush. This is something that you can use to cover up certain mistakes or cover up people. It's really cool, but we're going to get into that in the next lesson. The stamp tool operates pretty much the same way as the healing brush, but with just a few minor differences. There's also the eraser, something that I would only use on blank layers where I've drawn or used a brush, because otherwise, say if I select my tattoo layer and I erase, it works just like the brush, but it actually erases the layer. And this is what is known as a destructive edit, because I've changed the pixels, the raster information on that layer. And the only way to get it back is to hit Control-Z, which we don't want to rely on, because if we make a whole bunch of steps and go really, really far, and then suddenly we discover that we destructively edited something and we want it back, we only have so many steps back that we can take with the Control-Z method. So that's why using a mask is the better way to go, because then your image is always there. Next up, we have the gradient tool, something that we will get into down the line a little ways, but here's how to use it if you're curious. I'm going to create a new layer above everything, and I'll just call this gradient. Next, when I have the gradient tool selected, if I go up to this box here and double click, it brings up the gradient editor. So a gradient is basically a gradation from one color to another. So if I click on this box, I can choose one color, click OK, and see how it goes from red to black. But I can also change it to another color, like blue. And it still does a gradient between those two colors. And here you can change the smoothness. So if it's really choppy in between, if you want that kind of a look, you can change the smoothness. But I'm going to click OK. Now, if I click and drag from one spot to another and let go, it puts in that gradient. But I wanted to do this for a reason. A lot of first-time photo editors will think, oh no, I just destroyed the picture, where is everything? But you are on a different layer. Now, if I were to do this on my boy or my tattoo layer, yeah, the gradient's gonna go right over the top of it and destroy those pixels. But this is, again, a non-destructive edit. But it's also where I wanna show you blending modes. Now, blending modes are right here. And you have a couple to choose from. But when you have a layer selected, these options will help that layer blend with the other layers underneath it. So let's try a few and see what happens. So under normal and dissolve, these won't do very much right now, but these sections are separated for a reason. All of these options help to darken the top layer, and the one that starts with lighten lightens up everything. Overlay is a way just to kind of combine both layers evenly without messing with the light or dark features as much. And as you go lower, this is going to play around with the colors quite a bit. So I'm going to try multiply. Now see how multiply darkens everything, but it's also mixing and blending with the colors of the images underneath. Now let's try color dodge in the lighten section. So again, blends with the layer, but it lightens it up. Now we can try overlay. So that kind of keeps everything even, but it also blends the colors a little bit more into the regular tones of the image. Now if I go all the way to the bottom and select color, then what's happening there is it's taking the gradient's color and it's overwriting the colors of the layer beneath it. Anyway, there's a lot of really cool blending modes in here that have different effects, and you should just play around with them, see what you get. Next tool is the blur tool. Now it's important to note that this is a destructive editing tool, but I'll show you how it works. I'm gonna go to my boy layer, make sure that my photo is selected, and if I click and drag over the boy, the tool isn't lying. It blurs whatever you click and drag over. Next, you have your type tool. You can click anywhere on the document and start typing and put text there. Now, using the type tool still, you can double click your text, and then from there you can change the font, and it gives you a little preview of what the font looks like. You can also load up fonts. I'm not sure how that works online, but there seems to be a pretty good variety here already, so I don't think most first-time users are going to run into much issue. But I can choose a different type of font and change the size. And once I like everything, I can go to my mouse, click it, and move it where I want. And that's pretty much it. And the last few tools are made for creating shapes. You have the pen tool. You also have the rectangle, ellipse, line, parametric shape, which means that you can basically change the number of sides. So right now there's 5 sides, one shape. But if I change it to 8, I can also make an octagon. So there's lots of cool things you can do with that. Finally, there's the hand, which allows you to move through the document. So if I were zoomed in really close, you can use the hand to click and drag where you want to look. Another quick way to do this is by holding the space bar and then clicking and dragging. You'll notice when I hit the space bar, the hand comes up. Then I just have to click and drag. Finally, there's the zoom tool. The quick way to use this is by using Z on your keyboard to access it. And when it shows a plus, you can zoom in. And if you hold Alt, it'll show a minus, then you can zoom out. But again, if you zoom in really far, you can always hit Control 0, and it'll bring it back to full size. Last but definitely not least, we want to save this, right? So we're going to go to File, Save as PSD. Now here it's going to pull up a dialog box, and this is no different than downloading from a website to your computer. So select a spot where you want to save. I'm just going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to call this Intro Stuff. And you can save this file to your desktop. Once we click Save, it'll show as a download. Now that that's finished, you can exit out of this and leave the site. But for the sake of showing you how to bring your files back next time, I'll show you how that looks. So we go back to photopea.com, and when everything loads up, you go to File, Open. It's going to check your computer. Go back to where you saved the file, and I'll select Intro Stuff and click Open. And there we go. We have all of our layers, everything ready to go. And even if, say, you're in a situation where you're using Photoshop somewhere, but then you're out at a friend's house and they only have a computer, but you would love to show them a Photoshop file that you made, Photopea opens it automatically because it can read Photoshop files. So at the end of the day, Photopea is a really, really, really cool tool that is at your disposal right now for free, all inside of a web browser. And if you happen to be a student that's in a design class, or if you need to do photo editing for any of your classes or just in general, it doesn't even have to be for school, this is a great way to just jump in and start working. And as a teacher, I appreciate this so much because I can't expect my students to commit to $120 for Photoshop over the next year when they possibly may only be using it for 4 to 5 months. So this is such a valuable tool. But that kind of wraps it up. If you have any questions that I didn't cover about this, feel free to comment below and I will answer them as soon as I can. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And of course, I always take ideas for videos, so if there's something else that you would like to see, let me know. But in the meantime, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm Kevin Allen, and this was Technically Something. See you guys later.